Peru News Today. All you need to know about Peru.
Thalia Valdivia, the Huanuqueña who qualified for Paris 2024 and broke Gladys Tejeda's record, her struggle of self-improvement, injuries and family loss that almost stopped her career. Infobae Perú spoke with the marathon runner born in Lauricocha, Huánuco, who will fulfill her dream of representing Peru in the next Olympic Games, but who lived a difficult path until reaching her glory. Thalia Valdivia was born on April 27, 1996 in the town of Lauricocha, Huánuco. On February 14, he fulfilled one of his most cherished dreams by qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, completing the Rotterdam Marathon in a time of 2 hours 25 minutes and 23 seconds, a mark that remained in history, since in addition to granting her a place in the Olympic event allowed her to surpass the national record, 2 hours 2 minimum 57s, held by Gladys Tejeda since the 2022 Seville Marathon. But not everything has been easy for the seventh of 9 siblings, all from the town of Lauricocha, as she had to overcome great difficulties such as injuries and a family loss that had an impact on her career. Infobae Perú spoke with the national athlete and learned a little more about her history of improvement. I am happy and grateful to God for giving me the strength and also for this goal that I have achieved. Now I am in the process of recovery after the marathon, calmly waiting for what is to come. I imagine that I am going to return to my training progressively and possibly in the month of June I will run a short distance of about 10 or 5 kilometers as part of my preparation. And from there, carry out specific training, because the games are almost there. You qualified for the Olympic Games in the Rotterdam Marathon. How did you experience it and when did you realize that you had qualified and surpassed the record? My main objective when I planned this competition was to find the mark that would qualify me for the Paris Olympic Games. When I crossed the finish line I already knew that I had qualified by seeing my time on the final scoreboard, but I didn't know that I had broken the national record. I had no idea about that, I hadn't even thought about that record. About 10 minutes passed, I started to analyze a little and I realized that I had made a national record, and my happiness was even more immense. You broke the mark of a person you admire a lot like Gladys Tejeda. Have you had a chance to talk to her? Yes, I have always admired her, she is a national marathon reference. I didn't have the opportunity to talk to her, but we will go in the same delegation to Paris so we will actually be seeing each other there. It is like a dream to share with my references in this competition, it motivates me a lot to be with them and give 100% in the competition. What is your goal for Paris 2024? Obviously there is the dream of a medal, but I imagine there is also the issue of breaking a record. What would be a good result? Yes, the main objective is to see if we can break a record. Let's see how the route is, the weather. On those dates Paris is in summer and it seems to me that it is quite hot. All of that influences, but nothing is impossible. The only thing I know is that I am going to give my best, I am going to give my 100%, I am going to prepare a lot, and we are going to see what is coming. What were your beginnings in athletics? How did sports start to attract your attention? I had no idea what athletics was, I didn't know the sport, I didn't have an inclination for any sport really. My goal was always to study a university degree, because my father always instilled that in me. He told me that I have to study and that was my goal. I never thought that sport could change my life and open many doors and opportunities. I started in this sport when I was already 21 years old, from there I started climbing little by little. How did you get excited or watch a competition or were you invited? Mostly I liked running, but I did it more for health, as a hobby, to have a good lifestyle and not gain weight, like any young person. But I never imagined becoming a high-performance athlete. I remember when I went to one of my first competitions, a 3K organized by the Ombudsman's office in different regions of Peru. I came in second place, first another girl from Huánuco beat me. It was all between amateur athletes, the prize was 500 soles for the first and 300 soles for the second, and I grabbed that prize. That also motivated me and was a plus to wake up a little. I met more people in my region who were also dedicated to athletics, perhaps not professionally, but they did it at an average level within the region and knew that world better. They invited me to train with them, but I remember that I didn't go, I went once or twice a week, due to time issues, since we didn't agree on schedules. I went alone when I could, without any major commitment. But then time passed, the Lima 2019 Pan American Games were announced. I started to investigate more, because the news was a boom, and that's how I got closer to athletics. Did you have difficulties running your first marathons? In fact, yes. 1. When it starts, it is difficult. My beginnings were not easy at all. Now I compete with special shoes for marathons, but at the beginning no, I didn't know what shoes to run with. I remember that I trained with the shoes that I could find on the market, within reach of my pocket. It's not that I bought shoes especially for runners, or for competition, or especially for training, anything like that. I remember that in my first race, I ran with shoes that had a logo similar to Tigra, but in reality they were something else. When I was getting into athletics a little bit, it was still hard for me. It's not that the economy was booming like that, enough for me to indulge in sneakers. I have been climbing little by little. In fact, when I got 100% into athletics, I became independent. I started to cover my expenses myself, absolutely everything, and it was a little difficult to pay for myself. Being an athlete requires a lot of investment and dedication, so that your growth and development is optimal. So sometimes I felt like, what do? I don't know if I'm going on the right path, but I believe that, when God has a plan for us, things will happen. It is true that Huánuco is not that high, but do you think that the geographical conditions help athletes from the mountains have such good results in international competitions? Of course, altitude helps you generate more aerobic capacity, especially in long events, like this marathon. Huánuco is at 1,900 meters of altitude. It is not that high, but it has been proven that this factor is key. We see that many athletes are mostly from our high Andean areas. Before the 2019 Pan American Games you had already won medals in some competition, but that championship was another level. How did you experience it and how important was it for your career? For me it was something new, something big, something great that I was experiencing. It was my first competition of that magnitude. In fact, with some nerves, but just by being there, representing Peru, wearing the shirt, competing in front of the public, that alone made me feel happy. I was excited to see how people supported you, encouraged you. I remember that when I entered the stadium, I saw that it was full of people, and they barely saw that you were wearing the Peruvian shirt. Well, people were cheering you on, shouting. And that was quite exciting that I experienced it. I loved it, it moved me a lot. And that was also a very important plus for my sporting growth, and motivated me to continue training, to continue making an effort. And I always dreamed, I told myself, that one day I could win, maybe not now, but at some point I will. Then the pandemic arrived, sports were paralyzed, and you had two blows that kept you away from athletics, right? One of my biggest difficulties was the loss of my dad. During the pandemic my dad left, not because of the pandemic, but because of problems other than that. And it was one of the hard moments that I had to live and face. I stopped training all year 2020, I forgot to be an athlete. I focused more on my family, and in a certain way I began to embrace more, to value my family more, in this case my mother, the one I have left. Those pretty tough moments affected my career a lot, but then I got back into it. It never, at that moment, crossed my mind that I might leave or abandon athletics. Another of the hard moments that I had to deal with were injuries. I suffered many injuries that kept me away from many competitions. For example, looking for the international classifications for Tokyo 2022, which was what I dreamed of, or running a 10,000. My dreams already seemed far away, because I came back from the pandemic, I started training, I got injured, I continued training. I spent the entire year of 2021 fighting because I did not return to the level I had. It has cost me a lot to return after a stop. How much did your father support you in your career? What do you think seeing what you have achieved would tell you? My dad would be happy. He loved this sport. He always dreamed of me being a good athlete. He has always supported me. Sometimes I didn't do well in competitions, but he would call me and tell me that this is sport, that everything is fine and that next time I will do it. After my dad left, the first thing I missed was that the competition ends and not seeing his call, because he always did. I felt that immense emptiness after his departure, but over time you accept what has happened and you begin to live with it. Today my dad would be super happy, the most proud of what I'm achieving. Leave us your comment, give us your like and subscribe to continue growing, and follow us on our social networks, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram and TikTok.
Peru News Today. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram.